Today is day 114, and we're reading from selected passages from the book of Psalms. Watch for Messianic references in the Psalms, and that is so exhilarating to see. Hundreds of years before the coming of Jesus, there were prophetic words foretelling his appearance. And also look and notice those passages that speak of a future resurrection. There's not a lot of Old Testament passages that give us much clear insight to this, but we do run across these from time to time. Now, in Psalms 43, David is struggling with his feelings, and he feels far from God. He reminds his soul of the truth. It's this inner turmoil of which Paul talks about between the one part of me that is struggling and wrestling with the flesh, and another part of me that wants to embrace God. And here's what David says: "Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you in turmoil within? Hope in God." And so David moves from feelings to where he begins declaring. He's making declarations, hope in God. It's as if what Jesus said about out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. It's as if something springing up from deep within inside, which he says, whole soul hope in God. This is exactly what Moses told the Israelites to do. He said, now remember who God is. And secondly, he says, remember what God has done. That was the purpose of the Passover and festivals, was that they would recite these. This would be reminders of God's past faithfulness and involvement in their lives. In Psalms 44, David praises God for the things he's done for his ancestors, not just for what he's doing in him, but he's looking back and he's thanking God for his faithfulness. Now, he remembers that God is the one who grants victory. And he says this: "You are my king, O God." And then he says, "Through you, your name shall prevail." So the whole aspect is of David redirecting his thoughts and continually going back and remind himself of God's power and his rule and reign. Psalms 45 is the 9th Messianic psalm. Here it is. These are prophetic revelations of a coming Messiah. And the Messiah, or Christ, means anointed one. Now, these are shadows and give us insight of this Christ. There will be more than just a man. In fact, if you look in verse 6 and 7, here's the proof that Jesus is more than just a man. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He's very God of very God. And you look at that, the backdrop of Hebrews chapter 1, verse 8 and 9, and you'll find that Hebrews reiterates that this passage indeed deals with Jesus as the promised Messiah. Now, this passage speaks also of Christ's kingdom, which he will set up at his second coming, his second advent, and it will be an eternal kingdom. He'll rule as a sovereign God and ruler over the universe, and he will demonstrate his power over all things, all people, and over all the powers of darkness. Jesus Christ, King of Kings, Jesus Christ, Son of God. He's very God of very God. Now, Psalms 49 is addressed to everyone, and it's a message for all people. It's kind of like an observation, as sometimes we are prone to be envious of the poor and the powerful, and we are reminded here that the rich and the poor and the powerful and the servants have this one thing in common. You know what it is? You're going to die. You cannot escape this. You can't buy yourself out of this. You can't take a detour. The fact is, wealth cannot save you. This is what basically this Psalm 49 is saying. Wise men die just as the fool will die. We leave our wealth to others. All that we attain and all that we get, we will. And we think our homes, we think our possessions, we think all those things are going to last forever, and they don't. They will pass away. The final two verses of this chapter speak of a future resurrection. This is what's so exciting. The promise of God through Jesus, redeeming my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. That's what the Bible is saying here. This is what Jesus did, as is what is recorded in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 7 through 10, in which he descended in the lower depths of the earth, and he preached to those in prison Now, in that resurrection, be reminded, we will have dominion over the wicked. So when we are prone to look at the wicked and think they're getting away with things and they're getting things we don't, remember something, our faithfulness to God, we will be rewarded and we will have dominion over all the wicked. While Psalms 49 ends with its focus on death, Psalms 84 focuses on life. And you can see David's longing for a deep relationship with God. This indeed is life, dwelling in the presence of God. Here's what he says: for a day in your courts is better than 1,000. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God. That is real life. And David exemplifies that again and again. Psalms 85 is a plea for revival. This is our cry. It was a cry of David. It's a cry that springs forth from the innermost being of our hearts. Will you not revive us again? We need personal revival. We need church revival. We need national revival. We need a revival and awakening. And that can only come from God. And our cry ought to be of that. The revival, true revival, is found, though, in genuine and deep, persistent pursuit of God. You cannot exhaust this desperation and need for God.